All right, so welcome to our photo time for March. This is Kari, and I am with Cheryl and Colleen, and we call ourselves the Consistently Creative Crew. And typically, the first Wednesday of the month when we Zoom, we talk about photos and getting organized and all sorts of other things, specifically focused on photos. And while many people on our calls are scrapbookers, and we do scrapbook all the rest of the Wednesdays of the month, we are talking about our photos and preserving. And we've had a couple of really good discussions in both January and February. And tonight I'm going to focus a little bit differently on organization than what we talked about in the previous 2 months. And so let's get started. So here are my topics for the night. It's kind of an outline. So photo organization, the first thing I want to talk about is why is it so hard? What makes this just such a challenging thing for people? And then some general steps to take. And then we're going to talk about some specific scenarios. And in those scenarios is when I'm going to kind of pause, well, maybe pause the recording, but maybe not. So we'll see if people are okay with being recorded, but kind of talking through these scenarios with people and looking at them. And then talking about with your own photos, where to start, and then writing some things down. So the first thing as I was looking at a bunch of websites and some photo manager information about why is getting your photos organized or anything organized so hard? Well, sometimes it's a lack of motivation. But I think for everybody who's here, it's not that you're not motivated because you're here. It's probably, for some of us, it's a lack of time or how to manage the time necessary to do the organization that you want. And then I ran into this interesting article about indecisiveness is the thing that tends to cause most of us, the majority of our problems with getting things organized. And they broke it down into these 4 categories, which I thought was really interesting. One could be due to being overwhelmed just by the whole thing. Another can be due to this idea of having to be perfect, and it has to be perfectly figured out. It has to have a perfect path, a perfect plan. So that's something that tends to happen to people. There's also this fear of failure, and I think that kind of goes hand in hand with the idea of being perfect, but it's also the what if I make a mistake? What if I, do something that messes things up? And then there's just a general lack of confidence, and I've definitely seen this with people who say, I'm not great at technology, or I really don't know how to do that, or I'm not an organized person. That can also cause us to be very indecisive about how to do things and what we're doing things. And the last thing that I was finding in a few articles is that photos have a sentimental value for most of us. And so we're attached to them, and there are emotions attached to them that isn't the same with other inanimate objects. A lot of inanimate objects, we don't have that emotional heart connection with them. So they're a little bit easier to organize as far as reducing the number of things that you have or culling out things and getting rid of things. So I think this really kind of hits home for most of us as to why is it so hard. And I think part of being able to do it and make progress is to kind of recognize what is it or what things in here are the things that are causing it to be hard for you. So basically the steps to take is we want to state our goals, and we talked in January about stating some goals. And it's been interesting watching those of us who stated some goals and worked towards goals. Sometimes it's really hard, and a goal without a plan and how to achieve that goal is challenging, if not impossible to do. So we're going to talk about some photo goals that you could have. Then the next step would be to gather them, then to sort them, And this sorting is kind of a first pass sorting, and I'll talk more about that. Then a decluttering or downsizing what you have, then organizing them, and then backing them up. It was interesting as I looked at a number of different websites for different lists. Most places do not include the backup as part of their process. And those of you who were here with me last time will know that I said backup, I think, is the #1 priority with our photos, because if they're not backed up and you lose them, it really doesn't matter what you had, how beautiful they were edited, how great they were organized, because if you lose them, none of that really matters. So I was surprised that that was true. So I definitely decided I needed an emphasis on that backup in our steps to take. So let's break those down. So when we're organizing, what is your purpose in organizing? And I think in talking to a lot of people, we try to do everything all at once. So I think it's good to state it from the get-go. Is it for you to be able to find your photos more easily? Or is it for your family to be able to find them, or for future generations? And the reason I think that these are different, because if you're the keeper of the photos, particularly if you're a scrapbooker or you do stuff with your photos, for you to be able to find specific photos from an event or a time frame, or to be able to help your kid with projects or grandkids with projects, your purpose in organizing is a little bit different than your future generations who are going to be looking back on, who were these people? Where did they live? What did their home look like? What did a vacation look like? What did the main town square look like? That's very different than what you need to do to be able to find your photos now. And I think kind of an in-between here is also for your family to be able to find things. My husband and daughter do not need to be able to find their way through all the thousands of photos that I have. They really only need the best of the photos that I have. They don't need them all. So recognizing what your purpose is in doing what you're going to do with your photos, and who is the intended audience, is really helpful, because what you're going to be doing in the next steps will vary depending on who your audience is. Your future generations are not going to want 500 pictures of the flower garden in your backyard. They might want a few, but they are not going to need all of them. The person who's scrapbooking them and trying to make a beautiful photo album with, their gardening and all of the different flowers that they've been cultivating, they're going to want them because they want them for a different purpose, but they want them, and then they may never look at them again. So I'm hoping that I made some sense in this. So the purpose and who your intended audience is, what you're going to be organizing for, who you're going to be organizing it for, it kind of makes a difference in what your steps are going to be and what they're going to look like, and how easy it is to reduce the number of photos that you have. So then you need to gather all your photos in one place, because if you don't have them in one place, it is really impossible to organize anything. It's the same thing as cleaning out your kitchen drawer. If you don't take everything out of the junk drawer and putting it all on the counter and going through it, you can't figure out what you have and if things are in the wrong place. You've really got to have all of it there in one spot. And you can do this with physical photos. You can also do this with digital photos. For our purposes, it really doesn't matter which one you're doing. Even if the ultimate goal is to get everything to digital, or everything that's important to get to digital, you might be looking at a physical grouping of photos. So then once you have some group of photos, be it a shoebox, a memory card, a part of your camera roll on your phone, are there groups of photos in this set that go together? Are they from the same time frame? Are they from the same event? Are they about the same person? Are there duplicates? Is there any way that you can take whatever batch of photos that you have that you're going to work on and group them and sort them into any semblance of order. Again, this is very generic because what photos you're choosing, how many photos you're working on, all of these details are going to be a little bit different. We're going to talk through some of those scenarios. But this process, this sorting process should be fast. This should not be the agonizing going through every photo individually and deciding what you're going to do with it. Do a quick sorting step early on. Then go through and declutter what you have. And this is where you're going to try to make your best decisions of what do you really need to keep? Are there duplicates? Are there blurry ones? Are there poor quality ones? Are there awkward ones? Are there ones that are really no longer of interest to you? Are there things that bring back bad memories? Are there ones that have people that you don't know who they are and they're not important in your life anymore? Sometimes when you look at a photo, it's very obvious, but sometimes you're still not sure and you're looking at it and you're like, well, I don't know. Well, does it bring back some good emotions? If you're still kind of ambivalent about it, you're really not sure. One of the steps that a lot of people take is they recommend holding on to it for a defined period of time and then coming back and looking at it later. So that can be a grouping, a subgrouping within your sorting to getting your way through the process. But again, the more time you take, the more you put your emotions into it, the harder this process is going to be. So then organizing. So I want you to notice now, this is the first time we're really truly looking at the organization of how we're going to do this. And this is almost the last step. So this is right before backing up. So how should these be organized? So however you sort it, is that really the way you want these to be saved and preserved? And if they're printed, are they going to end up in albums or scrapbooks or boxes? Do you need to digitize them? And if so, and if not, how are you backing up printed photos? Because that's really a challenge to back up your printed photos. But again, if it's the only copy that you have, and something happens to the physical building that they're in, you've lost them. Also digital. How do you want them organized? In folders, in albums? Are you going to use them for a slideshow? So they're in something like a digital photo frame, or you're going to be projecting them on a TV or a display? And what kind of backups are you going to be utilizing for that? So this process of organizing is when you're really getting into how are we going to organize this for our intended audience. And then backing up, kind of like what I mentioned, physical photos are hard to back up. But for a long time, we did get doubles of our printed photos. So you may have some of those around. Or you may have photos that are shared among family members and multiple people have copies. Digital photos are definitely easier to back up. But just a reminder, don't have all your backups in the same building. Talked to a few people recently who have, yes, I have 3 backups. And it's like, okay, well, where are they? Well, one's in my living room and 2 are in my office. And I'm like, if your building burns down, what do you have? Nothing. They're like, but I've never thought about that. And I'm like, yeah, that's important, right? So consider having one of your digital backups in a different building, actually having one of your physical backups in a different building. So here's where I want to talk through some scenarios with people. And if you, I can leave it right now. So this is just the screen, but you're welcome to come off of mute. So I want to talk about a little bit differently about if you have a trip and what kind of photos would you have? What kinds of things do you take pictures of when you're on a trip? And then we'll talk about how might you sort and declutter them if you were organizing for yourself. So those of you who are here, if you'd come off of mute, if you're comfortable, what kind of photos do you take on a trip?
Too many.
Too many, okay.
Yeah.
But what do you take photos of?
Scenery.
Scenery, okay.
My dog.
Family.
your dogs, family. What else?
The beach,
The beach,
sunsets, way too many.
sunsets. Okay.
Interesting people.
Interesting people. How about buildings?
Yeah.
Restaurants and food.
Restaurants and food. Yeah, right.
Lots of food. Yep.
Lots of food and beverages, right? Okay. That's a pretty reasonable list, right? So if you go on a trip, you probably have photos of all these different things. So if you're thinking about just for you, based on what you currently do with your photos, what would be the best way of sorting these photos? Would they be by this? Would you want to find all the sunsets from a trip? Would you be looking at all the restaurants? Would you be going through by day? What would you do?
I usually sort by day or trip, like
Yeah.
activity.
Okay.
When I go on a trip, it's by day.
Yeah,
Okay.
chronologically is how I do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. Let's, we're going back. Let's say the trip was 15 years ago. Now I want you to go and find some photos from that trip. Will you be able to know the days? Are you able to determine it was day 3, which was July 5th on that trip? Is the date going to still be helpful to you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Wow, you guys have better memories than I do. Anybody who the date wouldn't still be helpful? All right. Well, I am totally different from everybody who's here then. For me, the date wouldn't be helpful because I could not tell you whether it was day 3 that we visited that museum or day 4 that we visited the park. I would have no idea, even on trips that were probably 8 years ago. I would not know that because I can't retain that information. I would have to look at a log. I would have to look at an agenda. I would not be able to remember what day we visited. If we were down in Disney, which day we visited Magic Kingdom or which day we visited Universal Studios. I couldn't even tell you the last trip that we took, what date I would. And for me, going back even further, I would not know what, I wouldn't even have an idea of sort of order unless it was like a driving trip and I could say we traversed from Ohio down to Florida and therefore on the way we went through these states in this order. So I would struggle to do anything that wasn't extremely recent by date and chronologically. But
if you have the photo, isn't that what we're talking about? If you see the photo and it's in this order.
well, you're not in
That's-
order yet, right? We've just got a batch of stuff. We've just got a batch of photos, right? What if this was a physical?
Oh, I thought you
set?
were saying we had them organized.
No, we haven't.
Oh,
We're starting
not
to
organized.
get
That's
we're
altogether
not
different thing.
organized. We're just getting ready to start organizing them.
So
So
are these photos like this or are they digital you're talking
they
about?
could be either. They could be either.
Because digital already has a date stamp on it.
True. True.
These
True.
don't always.
Those don't always, right? Physical ones don't always.
I usually sort by like activity, like I can recognize, unfortunately, most of our trips seem to involve a lot of castles, so it gets a little tricky, but try to, sort by the activity and then kind of go back and say, what day did we do that?
Okay.
And then when all is said and done, I normally have them, especially digitally, I can't say it, digitally, I have them like day 1, castle such and such, day 2, whatever the date is, and family picnic or something like that. But
Right. Yes.
first it's just a file.
Right. Yeah. First, it's just a mess of photos, right?
Okay.
So, okay.
If I had a mess of photos, like a Disney trip, it would be, okay, these are Magic Kingdom, these are Animal Kingdom, these are
Right.
whatever that place is.
Right, right. Okay, so there is reason for having more than one piece of information about each photo, right? And
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
it's easier to identify something by where it is and who is in the photo than necessarily knowing the date when you just look at the photo. What about your family? What are they going to be looking for from this trip? What are they likely to be looking for? Are they going to want every photo from this trip? Are they going to be wanting some kind of
Probably
just
an
best photos?
overview of the whole time with the best photos.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it
that's
depends
like
on,
maybe the big activity of that day or the trip.
I think it depends on who you are considering your family.
Okay.
Like if you're talking about my kids, no, they're not interested. They weren't on the trip because I'm just
Right.
thinking of recent trips that we took. However, I know my husband who was with me on the trip. He is not necessarily asking for a date or a day. He just wants to know, oh, do you remember visiting this place? Where was that? Because he can't remember the specific details of where it was, but he wants to know, like he knows he's visited it. So more of a general, what country was that, or that type of thing.
Right.
So
Right.
I think it depends on who in your family is looking for the information. He
Right.
doesn't care about what day we went there. He couldn't care less if it was March or June or, you know.
Right.
No,
Yes.
he doesn't. I just know he
Yes.
doesn't.
He doesn't
So,
care.
Yeah, he
So,
does not care about that.
right. And that's probably true for a lot of people who would be looking at this other than you, right?
That's right. Yeah. Going back to the type of like the pictures, I always take pictures of signs,
Mm-hmm.
and then any of the pictures that follow are about that place.
Which is really helpful, right?
For me, it's helpful because when I don't do that, I can't specifically say that that monument or that castle is from a place. But if I get a little prompt, like a picture first, it helps me kind of figure out where we're at.
Right. Yes. And that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of introduced what the next thing is about for future generations. So those who are
Mhm.
not on the trip,
Right.
what are they going to care about this trip? Are they going to care? I'm seeing some shaking heads, right? So
Yeah.
maybe won't care. Okay. So it's very different, right? So who your intended audience is in when you're looking at a set of trip photos is really going to determine what you're keeping at all. Now, future generations, well, I'll come back to that. Okay, so, okay, that was really good. Next set. Okay, some wedding photos. And I'm not necessarily saying your wedding photos. I'm just saying you go to a wedding and you got a bunch of photos, and it could be a family member, it could be a friend. What kind of photos do you take at a wedding?
Cutting the cake.
Okay,
Well, the bride.
Yeah.
right.
Hopefully the couple together.
Yeah.
Okay.
And any
Your
significant,
family members.
significant family that's there.
Okay. What else?
Bridal party,
Okay.
Mhm.
the dancing, the
Yeah.
first dance.
Okay.
Pictures of when everyone's very nice looking, and then perhaps pictures at the end of the night when ties and tuxedo jackets and all that have been tossed aside.
Okay. So we've also got like photos of the ceremony, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
photos of the reception. And maybe some photos at wherever park. I'm just gonna say at a park. Just wherever they might take photos with the whole wedding party. Okay, you've got quite a collection here. So for you, what's your important part of being able to sort these and organize them and declutter them? What kind of piles are you going to make if you're taking physical photos?
For me,
Versus-
people I know and people who I don't know.
Okay.
I don't care about the people I don't know.
No.
Okay.
I tend to do it in order of how it happened. So
Okay.
it would be the ceremony, and then if it was, you know, the first dances before cutting the cake or whatever. So I don't know, chronologically, does that make sense? But
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So for your family, okay, assuming again, it's going to be very much like the other one, whether it's going to matter whether these are people in the family that they care about or people or who are not in the family that they don't care about, right? So when you talk about
Mhm.
this, so it's going to matter who the wedding party is. Okay. And probably the same thing is true for future generations, but is there anything else we can say about what might be important to keep, or what would the rest of your family be interested in from this, from a wedding? Are they going to want every photo that you have?
No.
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 So we're probably going to only be interested in some of the photos.
Mhm.
Okay, and what about future generations? How often are future generations interested in wedding photos? Are you interested in wedding photos of your parents, your grandparents, your
Oh, yeah.
great-grandparents?
For genealogy, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Family members mostly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
okay. And would you want us to be able to see a good variety of these photos of your parents or grandparents if they were available?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so, this would probably be interested in most of the highlights available. Okay. All right. So photos from 2015. I just picked a random year. So what kinds of things would you have taken photos of in 2015?
Holidays,
Holidays.
Mm-hmm.
vacations,
Birthdays. Trips.
Graduation.
Okay.
What else?
pets,
Pets. Right. Kids. What'd you say?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Oh.
would think kids. Or what about like if you were doing any renovations within your house or pictures
Yep.
from around town?
No, there's lots of pictures of snow. I'm just looking.
Weather.
Weather, yeah.
Weather.
Weather. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of pictures of dogs.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Hmm.
So lots of stuff. Don't even want to go into how many photos you might have from 2015 because that probably takes us down a rabbit hole. Huge variety of stuff, right? So if you were going to start sorting and decluttering and organizing all your photos from 2015, what kinds of things would you be doing? Would you just be trying to put all of these in chronological order?
Yep.
Hmm?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. I would. Yep.
Okay. Chronological
By-
order wins the
I
day.
do chronological and then by month.
And then by month. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So a little more specific.
Okay. Anything
By
else?
topic.
By topic.
Mm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. For me, instead of by month, I do by event or activity
Okay.
within that year.
Right. Right. Yes. And then it might, well, yeah, I think topic kind of can cover, pets or kids or renovation, all of that, I think kind of has covered that. Okay. So what about your family? What do they care about from 2015?
Dogs.
Dogs.
Everything that
And by topic.
By
Yeah,
topic.
yeah.
It could be dogs, it could be kids, it could be
Yeah.
holidays, could be birthdays, it could be fogs.
Mhm.
Um,
I agree
Okay.
with Lynn, like sort of by topic and then chronological after that. Like it's probably easiest for someone else to find something.
but by topic, almost, not in all cases, I'm sure, but for a lot of them, it might just fall into chronologic, because if it's by birthday, that's
Mhm.
not, if it's just kids, general kids, that's not going to be chronological, but if it's a
Mhm.
wedding, if it's a sports event, if it's a school program.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, what about future generations? What are they going to care about your 2015 calendar year?
Probably very little of it.
Maybe
Family.
Yeah.
or
The dogs again.
significant,
No.
yeah, significant events though.
Yeah.
So let's say there was a special graduation. Let's say it could have been high school or college or university. Future generations might want to know that, you're a graduate, or it would be a life story for somebody, part of the
Okay.
life story.
Okay. Maybe professional photos or school year photos,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there's it's kind of interesting diving into these different scenarios with everybody and kind of how it's all it is very different depending on who the audience is. All right. Scenario 4, your ancestors. If only we had thousands of photos of our ancestors, that would be really nice. But ideally, you are the ancestors to the future generations, and there will be thousands of photos available of you. But
Mhm.
let's just kind of think about ancestors and think about what kinds of things might you have of your ancestors.
Weddings.
Weddings.
Yeah.
The
They have a lot
weddings.
of, or I do anyways, I have pictures that are postcards.
Mhm.
Yes.
No, I know some came from Wales. I know some came from Finland, but they look like, if you turn them over, it says postcard on them.
It's
So I don't know
right.
what type
I have a
of,
lot of those.
It's photos of people, but they're labeled
Yeah.
postcard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
And
don't
they-
know who they are.
but they kind of look professional photos.
Ah,
Yeah. Professional photos. There's a lot of
Yeah.
those because not
Yes.
everybody had a camera.
Yeah.
So
That's right,
family
yeah.
portraits, kind
A
of.
lot of
Yeah.
a lot of events I have, and then
Yeah.
I'm not being facetious, but I have an awful lot of dogs over the years. From all the way back to when they were taking pictures, so
That's
that's a common
awesome.
theme.
Yeah. Mhm, mhm.
It's awesome. All right.
A lot of weddings,
Yeah.
there's always that.
Mhm.
Right.
A lot of
If we-
military too.
Oh, military. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a good one.
yes.
That's a really good one.
Mm.
All right. And sometimes we'll find like kid photos, like baby, young
Birth announcements.
children. Pardon?
Birth announcements.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, but if they wrote down who it was, that would be great, but they don't.
That would
They
be
just
awesome.
send they send a picture of a baby.
Right, right.
Or you can't read it.
Okay. So, interesting. So, how would you organize these? What would you be trying to do for yourself to get these in some semblance of order?
By family or individual.
Okay.
By unknown, I don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
I've got a whole stack of those sitting right next to me.
Some of us have shoe boxes of them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Maybe by
So-
location. By location?
by location, yeah, if you can, right?
Well, like knowing where the pictures were kind of taken. Like I know lots were taken in certain areas
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
at a certain, because that's where they moved to and that's where they lived, raised their family. So I know that's the same location. So
right,
you might be able to. I don't
right.
know.
Some families were better than others at actually labeling, right? So, maybe label on back, right? Do they have, they might have dates, they might not have dates, they might have people, they might have nothing. So it all kind of depends, right?
Yep.
Okay, so what about the rest of your family? What are they gonna be interested in on for this?
Probably the same. They're looking for, weddings and pictures of baby great grandpa and that kind of stuff like that. I think just 1 or 2 photos per individual is probably all they're looking for, and then maybe some events, or especially if, for example, someone was captain so and so of the Navy and seeing their official photo and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about future generations? I'm thinking it's gonna be about the same thing, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty much gonna take what they can get, and they're looking for the same thing. Why does that
Mhm.
do that? Change the font, change everything. Okay. So in looking at these 4 scenarios and thinking about who the audience is, I'm hoping that I gave you a little bit of an appreciation for what our task is when we're sitting down to say, I'm going to organize my photos. And it's going to be different depending on what group of photos you're looking at and who your intended audience is. And so sometimes I think when we're sitting down to do this, we look at doing everything for every photo, and that's a huge task. So when we're actually looking at it for a batch of our photos, we want to look at where we're going to start. And I always recommend starting with a small group of photos that's recent, because you are going to be more likely to remember things if it's recent. Even if I go back to a trip that I took 3 years ago, it's hard for me to remember some of the details, especially if I don't have some other thing to assist me as to what order things happened or when certain things happened, especially if a date and time stamp on the digital photo is not accurate, because some of the cameras still don't, I mean, they don't have that, and the battery dies and it's January 1st of whatever year something is. So, but I always recommend a small group that are recent, partially because early success helps keep you motivated, because if it gets too hard too quickly, it's really easy to give up. A smaller group, or a relatively smaller group, is more manageable, and recent memories are easier to recall. So are there other places that people like to start that you think is a better place for you to start with a group of photos? Or how do you pick a place to start? Now everybody's quiet. They've all put themselves on mute. So those of us who, who are listening to the recording, is now very silent.
I still
When I-
sort by topic, because
Still.
if I'm gonna create a scrapbook album, let's say whether it's digital or physical, most times, it's an event or something like that I'm doing, so
Okay. Yeah.
like topic.
Yes. Okay.
I still go by year. I mean, I just brought back a bunch of photos from Sweden, and they're actually currently in a box because they smell really bad because they've been in storage for God knows how many years. But that I'll probably try to do by year and then by person. So it's
Okay.
still chronological, and no matter how
Okay.
I go about it.
All right.
I like your suggestion, Kari, about picking something fairly current somewhere. It's more manageable, and then you feel like you're making progress because you accomplished something. I kind of like that.
Right. Right. I think with all of the books that I've read about tiny habits and atomic habits, it's small successes that you have, which helps keep you going as you're trying to move forward on doing something new, establishing a new habit, establishing a new process or something that you're working on. So I think when you're sitting here and you're going to organize your photos, most of the people here are already kind of in a process of doing this. So, but for those people who are watching this, who are maybe new to organizing, my hope was that we could have something here for you to take away and work on. But where I would start was state your goals. What photos are you going to work on? What grouping of photos is important for you to start with or work on next? If you've already finished some, you can always come back to this and take another look. And who is the intended audience? Who are you organizing them for? Do they have to be extremely organized and in chronological order and identifying people and places because you need that? If your intended audience is future generations, because you've already done everything you wanted to do with that photo, if you're scrapbooking, what you're keeping and what needs to be organized in them is very different. So then gathering your photos, where are they? Identify where are you going to work on them? How are you going to sort them? Obviously tonight we had a lot of discussion about sorting chronologically. And depending on how you're doing that, and if you're doing that digitally, that's not always part of the process, because our software and Forever's online storage will organize them digitally in chronological order for you. So if they're digital and you're using either Forever Historian or Forever's permanent storage, if you're just doing chronologically, you shouldn't have to do much of anything. It's if you're going to do anything else with them. Decluttering, the obvious ones to get rid of. We went through kind of a detailed list of what ones to get rid of, what ones to get yourself permission to remove. Then the organization. So now you already have specified who your intended audience is going to be for this group of photos, and how you might want to be organizing them. So now you're going to go ahead and get those organized. And then the last step, like I said earlier, in the list that I was finding online, backup. You need to back up whatever your photos are. You need another copy, and you should specify how you're planning on backing them up. Because once you've gone through this process and you've narrowed everything down and they're organized and they're good, you should have them back up so you never have to go back and do it again. So that way you don't lose them. It doesn't end up being a process that you ever have to repeat. So tonight, and I will, once I pause the recording for the people who are here, I will put the survey in the chat. But I went over kind of some ideas on why is it so hard to get our photos organized, and recognizing some of the ideas that make it hard for us to do this, as well as some steps to take. We talked through a number of scenarios, which I thought was very good. Where to start and what you should be writing down as you're going through this process to try to help. And the next thing that I really have on the agenda, and I wanted to mention it for everybody here, is that the team that I'm on with Forever is having a World Backup Day event. They've done this every year that I've been with them. World Backup Day is the last day of March, which is March 31st, but it happens to also be Easter Sunday. So instead, we're going to be hosting it on April 1st at 8 p.m. And it is going to be a free online event. I just need to know who might be interested to be able to get the Zoom link to you. It's been very interesting the past few years. We've had estate planners, insurance planners, people talking to us about fire safes. I'm not sure who's all going to be talking at it this year, but it's always been a really nice event. It's typically 60 to 90 minutes, depending on who all the speakers are. But it's very much focused on backing up. So because of World Backup Day. So I don't know, does anybody have any additional questions before I wrap up? Questions, comments, nothing? We're very quiet. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording if I can get to the button. But I appreciate everybody being here, and we can just spend a little time working on our photos and getting organized. But thank you again.